Crypto mining at home in 2025 is becoming near impossible. With the rising electric rates all around the globe and industrial farms taking over all the hash rate, it's becoming harder and harder to eke out some profits. But there is a way. With the use of solar and the right size and scale farm, you can make some good profits. And today I'm going to show you how exactly I'm doing that. Now, there are a few things to do, a few things not to do, and I want to take you all through that, give you a more informed idea so you can make a decision as to whether or not this might be something that's worth it for you. So we'll talk about the profits, we'll talk about the hardware, and all the things that might make an impact on whether or not, this is a good idea for you or even for me. So let me know your thoughts down in the comments. First up, let's have a look at the solar itself, the size and the costs. But before we do, very quickly, check the pinned comment down below. We do a giveaway every single week and there will be details how to enter. Let's get into it. My solar setup consists of 20 370 watt Longi panels and an 8 kilowatt inverter to make use of all of that energy. The total upfront cost was $8,811, but as you can see with that rebate of $4,080, the final amount was $4,531 all the way back in November of 2021. So how did I come to the conclusion that this was actually going to be a smart investment? Well, at the time, I knew my farm was making about $6,000 in revenue and was costing about $6,000 to run, so a net zero. Knowing that the solar would cover my complete farm through sunlight for at least 1/3 of the day, I knew I could take out a $2,000 profit from that $6,000 total, meaning in just over 2.5 years, I would have had this thing paid off and then some. My next consideration was, do I get a battery? So at the time, the batteries were about $10,000 to $15,000 to get one installed for about a 20 to 30 kilowatt capacity, depending on where you were looking. And as this was in 2021, I knew Ethereum was going to proof of stake soon and profits were about to be almost non-existent. My first thought was, let's get the solar installed, let's ROI on that in 2.5 years, and then we can think about a battery later. If I was to add that battery at a sort of $2,000 a year profit, you'd be looking at another 5 to 7 years to pay that thing off before I'd taken any profits. So at the time, I thought no. Maybe in hindsight, I probably should have done it because it would have been a great investment to have now, but that's always a consideration for the future for my mining farm. All right, guys, welcome inside the mining room. We're in here. Now it's a bit tight, so let me try and get a bit of an angle so you can see what we've got working in here. So I'll give you a quick layout breakdown first so you can see how the sort of airflow works, how we keep this as cool as possible. Obviously, as you can tell, up on the wall right here, we've got a number of different exhaust fans, so that is taking the hot air out. And just up here, let's close this door. This is most of our intake. Now we've got a MERV filter on top of that. I can't remember what MERV rating it is, but basically that's just stopping a lot of the dust coming out. And a couple of vents here as well, just to get a little bit more airflow. Now, it is getting into summertime here soon in Australia, so it's definitely getting warmer, but for now, this is working. And because we've sort of tweaked this mining room to be as efficient as possible power-wise, heat isn't too much of an issue. So speaking of power, we've got a power outlet up there with 2 dedicated 10 amp 240 volt circuits and 6 more down there. So we have a total capacity of 80 amps in here. Definitely a lot more than we're using, which is great because the less power, the better. And for reference, our solar panels that you saw just before are just above this ceiling right here and over in that direction as well. So let's start with our only surviving ASIC miner that we have in here. Right here, this absolute monstrosity of a thing. This is a silencer, this is the fan, and this is the actual ASIC itself. It's an Aleo miner, an Ae2, and that one's making some pretty good profit, about 20 bucks a day right now, but it puts out a ton of heat, hence why we've bootleg exhausted it straight outside, just to reduce the overall heat in this room. Now, we did have two other ASIC miners sitting right where these two are now. We had a Fluminer L1 and a Volcminer D1 Mini, both mini home ASIC Dogecoin miners, but we've sold those and we bought this bad boy right down here. So this is a 5090. This is an Asus TUF 5090. A very expensive card, but a very good and profitable card. Now, these are all AI rigs right now, so they're on a program called OctaSpace and another program called Salad, which we'll talk about later. And this is our second 5090 right here. So these two are both 5090s, making really good profit. The rest are a number of 50 series cards that are also making good profit, less power, so more efficient. And then, of course, we've got a few solo Bitcoin miners up top, just chunking away. Look, we're never going to hit a block with those, I don't think, but we can always hope. Now, I'll flash up on the screen what this mining room used to look like, because we've had the solar for a while now, as you saw before, but we used to have about 100 different GPUs in here, making a lot less than we're making now. So let's jump on over to the computer now and start talking a bit of numbers, see what sort of money these things are making, and let you guys know how the solar actually works throughout the day to power all of these. And I want to give you a few scenarios to help you out as to whether or not solar might be a good decision for you at home and in what applications it might work the best. So without further ado, let's get out of here because it's hot, and I'll see you at the computer. Now, when you take into consideration the costs of the solar, the electrical setup, intakes, exhausts, the ASICs, CPUs, GPUs, RAM, all in all, this setup cost around $20,000 US. Now, fortunately, a lot of this has been paid off over the last 4 or 5 years, leading me mostly into profit, except for the two brand new 5090s and a few RAM sticks we've bought here and there. Let's talk about how this all works, how it's working for me specifically, and how you guys can use this as well if you've already got solar or if you're thinking about getting it. So my farm at the moment, with those 6 or 7, I think it is, AI rigs and the one ASIC, we're using about 3000 watts 24/7. So we are running these all the time. And as you know, I don't have a battery. So we're looking at today's output, and you can see we've pulled a total of 43 kilowatts, which is pretty much what my farm is pulling over a 24-hour period. But without that battery, we don't get to utilize all of that. So it gets sold back to the grid at about 5 cents per kilowatt hour. But that doesn't really make a huge difference in the grand scheme of things because our miners are making so much more. So knowing we're using about 3 kilowatts or 3000 watts at about, 7:30 at the moment, all the way through till around 3:30 or around 3 o'clock or so, we're fully covered by the solar. So these miners are running, completely off grid. And then there is some residual, overuse for the next, hour or two until the sun goes completely down. So very basically, if you would assume you had a sort of, 15-cent electric kilowatt rate, you knew that a third of the day you were covered, your theoretical 24-hour kilowatt rate might be around, 10 cents or so. And this can make all the difference when it comes to, whether or not you can actually be profitable or not. Well, let's take it one step further. Let's say you have one of those, say, Volcminer D1 minis that I mentioned before. Now that only uses 500 watts. So all the way from, 6 a.m., all the way to what, about 4:30, 5 o'clock. So about 11 hours you're covering that electric rate. So in theory, if you already had solar and you wanted to run one of these smaller miners at home or even an AI rig, you could reduce your electricity costs by half when calculating your profitability. Now, if you were trying to scale and use some of those bigger ASICs that use 3,000 to 4,000 watts, the second you've got two of them, you know, you're barely getting any coverage. So solar is going to work really well for these smaller home scale mining farms like I've got and we've shown you before. So for a bit of a visual representation, we've got up here the Volcminer D1 Mini Pre. This is the miner I just said I'd sold to buy that 5090. We've got up here 15 cents USD per kilowatt hour. So we can see at that rate. Now, this is miningnow.com. The numbers aren't exactly right, but it is consistent in its, you know, whether it's right or wrong, right? It's going to give you the numbers divisible, which will work out for this example. So at 15 cents making, you know, 22 cents profit. Not great. The second you take a third off that, right? If you were covered for the 8-hour period, you know, you're up to 82 cents. So only by taking, you know, a third of that kilowatt hour rate, you know, you're tripling, almost quadrupling the profit. Now, in another sense, if you were to say you had a 30 cent per kilowatt hour rate, you lived somewhere that was sunny, you know, you could see that it's using $1 or losing $1.50, I would say right now. If you were to be covered for 12 hours or even 11 hours and put yourself close at the 16 cents, it's going to put you in the profit. Now, of course, there's cloudy days and things like that to consider, but for a very small home scale mining farm, if you've already got solar, it can definitely help you get into the space and help you actually make some profits and pay off that hardware. Now, all of this, of course, is going to be dependent on how much it's going to cost you to set up that solar, right? You've got to work out your ROIs. You can do those numbers. I've done them myself, and we'll talk a little bit more about them later when we look at the final numbers. But if you're thinking about running ASICs at home off your solar, one, they're going to be way too loud. Two, they're going to have higher outlet power requirements, some of them needing 15 or 20 amp circuits, which just aren't standard pretty much anywhere in the world. And they're going to take forever to pay themselves back. So as mentioned, a smaller home scale mining farm is definitely viable if you've already got solar. So before we jump into the final numbers and look at exactly how much we're making after we've taken out the electricity, I want to show you guys exactly how it all sort of works for me, right? Now, there's a million different ways and things you can do with your, you know, mining rigs, ASICs, whatever it is, but here's what I'm doing. And let me know down in the comments if you have any better suggestions of how we can maximize our profitability with our farm. So you saw that new 5090 that I bought before. This one is on a program called Salad. So this is just a GPU compute power sharing platform. It's really good. I will leave a card up above for you to check out a video on this on how to do it, and links down in the description if you wanted to get started on all of this. So make sure you check that description because all the information will be there. This is a very set and forget program. You can run it on Windows, you can do it on your computer. If you're watching from a computer right now, you install the application and you're away and mining. So this 5090 has been really easy to set up. We've put it on Salad, and as you can see, it's making about 25 cents an hour before electricity and about $5.30, after electricity. Now, the best part about Salad and why I've got my 5090 on this in particular is the rewards. It pays you out in PayPal, right? So you're actually getting paid money for this, not crypto. So that might be an avenue you want to explore. The rest of those AI rigs that you saw in my mining room to start are on a program called OctaSpace. Now, this is an AI rental platform as well, except it does a fair bit more than Salad. Salad, generally, you'll be rented out to one host at a time, whereas on OctaSpace, you could be rented out for any sort of different application, whatever that be, you know, modeling tasks, even crypto mining. So there's a lot more diversity in what the renters and the people who are going to be paying for your rigs can do. So, you know, keep that in mind if this is something you decide to get into. Links and description, all of that sort of stuff if you want to learn a little bit more, because we've done a ton of OctaSpace content before. So how it all works, if you were to come onto this platform and, you know, decide exactly whether, you know, do I want to get into this or not, you would come into the marketplace right here. You would click on your GPU, say you've got a 3090, and you get a bit of an idea of what people are paying for these rigs. So, 15 cents, 30 cents, that's for two, obviously. 54 cents, that'll never get rented. 10 cents, so around that sort of range. So do your numbers, work out what your electric costs would be. Assume that your rig is going to use full power constantly. Take that away from the average profitability, and then you can figure it out. Now, it's key to note that consistency, uptime, and stability, and different hardware like your CPU, your RAM, and your disk speed and internet speed will all play a part in how often you can get rented. Now, fortunately or unfortunately, over the last few years, I've spent a bunch of money on CPUs and RAM and high-end stuff like that. So all of my rigs are pretty nicely spec'd out and can all get rented out pretty consistently for most of the time. This 5070 Ti, unfortunately, is probably the least rented out of the lot, but because the rest of these are all getting paid out, it really doesn't make a difference as far as my bottom line. Now, the last but certainly not least is that ASIC, the Iceriver Ae2 that you saw just before. It's an Aleo miner, and we're just on the dashboard right here looking at the payouts. So it's averaging anywhere from sort of 50, up to 70, close to 70 Aleo a day that it's making, which works out to about 15 or 20 bucks. I'll show you the numbers coming up very shortly. Look, these are kind of, boring, heartless machines. There's no tweaking. It's just plug and play. But if you're in it for pure profit, then this miner is a really good one. But make sure you check out my video on this because it does come with a few caveats. You will need to switch fans out if you're going to use one of these miners. The rest of the miners that we talked about before, the Volk miner and things like that, they're quiet, no fans. So if you are interested in getting something like this, join my Discord and I can sort of talk you through that, let you know whether it's a good idea or not to sort of get into one of these. But if you are interested, then before we get into the numbers, stay tuned for a word from today's video sponsor.
Attention crypto miners, are you ready to level up your mining game? Then look no further than CryptoMinerBros.com, your go-to source for top-of-the-line mining equipment. Crypto Miner Bros stock the latest ASIC miners and partner with the most trusted brands like Bitmain, Goldshell, Jazzminer, and Iceriver, just to name a few. Plus, with manufacturers' warranties of 6 to 12 months, worldwide shipping, and 24/7 customer support, you're fully covered no matter where you are. And don't forget, you can use code BearMarketMiner at checkout or click the link in description to save $70 on all products store-wide. Visit CryptoMinerBros.com today and start mining smarter.
All right, so now the fun part. Have we made any money this month? Well, fortunately, I've put together this spreadsheet because I'm sort of running a medium, home operation here. I need to know if I'm making any money because I'm paying plenty in electricity. So all very, self-explanatory, but let's talk you through it very quickly. So over the last month in October, we made 678 Octa now. The price of Octa right now is down at about 30 cents. It was at about 45 cents a little while ago, but the president and China and all that sort of stuff, everything's just crashing, burning around us, but hopefully that will change. 447 kilowatt hours at around 12 cents USD. Now, before my solar is integrated, that's at about 17, 18 cents. But as we discussed before, the 1/3 of the day we're covered. So about $53 in expenses. Doge, those miners have been sold, so you didn't get to see them in the room, but they were only sold in the last week. So in that period, 859 Doge. We made about 160 bucks, but we also spent about $146. So that's why I got rid of them, right? And put that money into a 5090 and put it on OctaSpace. We've gone from basically a 1-to-1, a net even return, to a 4-to-1 or thereabouts by putting it on OctaSpace. So definitely money well spent and things you should consider before you get into any of this sort of stuff. The Aleo, the Ae2, just under $2,000 for $485 worth of Aleo and only $110 worth of electric. So a 4-to-1 again, right? So you're getting to see now in real time how we've shifted from those 100 GPUs and really got smart about how we use this solar and made it more efficient and have much better profit margins. Lastly, salad, we made about $64. Now that's only been around 12 days, 13 days it's been online. 201 kilowatt hours we've used, $64 profit and $24 worth of electricity. So close to a 3-to-1, you know, so the Aleo and the OctaSpace are really doing the heavy lifting. And now that we've got rid of the Doge, this final number is going to look a lot better in the next month, which leads us to our monthly profit after electricity, $578 US, so about 900 Aussie dollars, which is really nice, a month profit after electricity. Now, the revenue, $913, would be nice if we made that. But this profit right now at $578 is in a tanked market, right? The last month, pretty much all of these coins are down by about 30%. So I take profits here and there when it's smart to. I'm fortunate enough that I don't have to sell to pay my electricity bills, so I'm not selling much of it at this minute, but when we have those nice pumps, I'll definitely sell again. So just under 600 bucks right now, I'll take it, and we will continue to add more OctaSpace rigs, more salad rigs. We'll have to have a good think about whether it's worth getting one of those Ae2s again. So that is going to wrap it up, guys. Hopefully you learned something from that, right? Hopefully, you know, you got to see what I've done, you know, what I've changed, and that might help you make a more informed decision, because that's what this is all about. I make these videos to help people make decisions. Now, if you do want any more information, make sure you join the Discord. We have got a ton of like-minded, very educated people in the space who can help you answer any of these sort of questions. And they're all international, everyone's all over the world, so you can guarantee if you've got a question, someone will be there to answer it very quickly for you. Now, remember, check that pinned comment up the top and check the description for those links if you want any more information on these setups, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.